Just drink the tea, Elias, Julian says, sliding the white china cup across my 72-year-old mahogany desk with a command that feels like a heavy chain. He stopped calling me Dad 2 weeks ago, and now he looks at this $12 million Maine estate like it is a prize he has already won. He tells me I am senile and that I should stop asking questions about the property lines. But I have spent 30 years as an FBI toxicologist cataloging exactly how a half milligram of scopolamine can kill a man's mind. I caught him smiling when I dropped that crystal decanter. But he has no idea I have already mapped his $4 million gambling debt to the very last penny. Before I Elias Thorne, tell you how I am turning his greed into a federal prison cell like this if you believe that loyalty is worth more than shared blood. Subscribe so you do not miss how this old man fights back, and please comment your city below, because the silence in this house is getting hard to bear. I am a forensic ghost, and Julian is about to realize that you never try to poison a man who spent 40 years finding the truth in the shadows. At 7 o'clock this morning in the library of my coastal Maine estate, Elias Thorne, a 72-year-old retired FBI toxicologist, watched Julian slide a cup of tea across my desk with a command that sounds more like a threat than a gesture of kindness. Julian tells me to just drink the tea and stop being so difficult about my medication. But I notice the toxic small detail that he has stopped calling me Dad and now uses my first name like I am a subordinate employee. I, the man who spent 30 years at Quantico identifying the invisible signatures of malice, tell him that the tea has a bitter aftertaste of almonds and betrayal. Julian laughs and whispers that my mind is clearly slipping if I think my own future son-in-law would ever try to hurt me. He tells me that Sienna is worried about my recent episodes, and that I should trust him to manage the $12 million family legacy while I rest. I, the primary victim of his $4 million gambling debt, pretend to take a sip of the scopolamine-laced liquid while secretly recording his admission of my supposed cognitive decline on a hidden device. Julian tells me that the probate court has already been notified of my condition and that he will be the one making the decisions from now on. He, the technical architect of his coming downfall. Watch him smile while he thinks he is slowly erasing my existence from this $5 million house. Later that evening, at 8 o'clock in the grand ballroom during the Heritage Gala, I, Elias Thorne, acting as the evening's primary benefactor, entered the room while feeling the first tremors of the chemical sabotage Julian had been preparing for weeks. Julian walks at my shoulder and tells the board members that I have been struggling to remember the details of our $3 million rare manuscript collection. I, the man who once spent 3 decades cataloging murder for the government, try to explain the history of the Thorne Charter, but the words feel like lead in my mouth. Julian steps in and tells the guests that he is heartbroken to watch a mind like mine finally fail after all these years of service. I, the patriarch who is being publicly lowered in status, see the local elites watching me with a mixture of pity and growing doubt. Julian whispers that I should just sit down before I embarrass the family further in front of our professional rivals. I, the silent witness to my own humiliation, realize that the role inversion is complete because the man I welcomed into my home is now acting as my jailer. He tells the crowd that he will handle the transition of the $12 million estate with the proper respect while I am moved into a care facility. I, the forensic ghost who is recording every whisper, watch Julian check his watch, as if he is counting down the seconds until he can officially replace me as the king of this cliffside. Shortly after the speech concludes in the center of the crowded ballroom, I, reacting to a sudden wave of nausea from the scopolamine, reach for the crystal decanter and accidentally smash it against the floor. Julian tells the guests to stay back and shouts that I'm becoming dangerous to myself and everyone else in the room. I, the 72-year-old forensic architect of his destruction, tell him that I just wanted a drink of water that didn't taste like ash. He tells the sheriff that I have been seeing things that aren't there and that the committal papers are already being processed by Dr. Eris. Julian says that Sienna won't help me because he has already convinced her that I am a threat to our $12 million legacy. I, the survivor of this calculated conspiracy, watch the old money elite of coastal Maine whisper that it is a shame to see a man of my stature fall so far so fast. Julian tells the staff to sweep up the mess and whispers that he will have me safely tucked away in a nursing home by the end of the week. I, the man who spent a lifetime finding the truth in the smallest details, walk away from the light while the guests believe they have witnessed the end of Elias Thorne. He tells Sienna over the phone that the incident tonight was the final proof they needed to take control of the $5 million house. I, the technical leader of this counterstrike, realize that the vulture is finally ready to snap at the bait I have laid in the shadows. At midnight, in the silence of my private study, I, Elias Thorne, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, sit at my desk and review the digital evidence I captured during the gala. Julian tells himself in the next room that he has finally cornered the old wolf and that the $3 million manuscripts will be sold to pay off his gambling debts by next month. I, the 72-year-old retired FBI expert, note the toxic small detail of his celebratory drink while he thinks I am lost in a scopolamine-induced sleep. He tells a man named Marcus over the speakerphone that the $12 million gold mine is now practically his because the old man cannot even remember his own name. I, the man who spent 30 years at Quantico, realize that he has no idea that every milligram of the toxin he gave me has been cataloged for the federal authorities. Julian tells the creditor that he will have the first installment of the cash ready as soon as the judge signs the order for my permanent care. I, the technical architect of a coming storm, watch the spectrometer data on my screen, confirm that the scopolamine levels in my blood are precisely where I need them to maintain the illusion of my surrender. He tells Marcus that I am a relic of a dead era and that he is the new master of the Thorne estate. I, the forensic expert who has already mapped his financial destruction, whisper to the darkness that he has forgotten that ghosts can still pull the trigger for justice. I am Elias Thorne, and Julian is about to learn that you never try to poison a man who wrote the book on how to find the invisible truth. At 6 o'clock in this morning, inside my private study, Elias Thorne, the retired FBI lead forensic toxicologist, opened the heavy floor safe to review the 30 years of government secrets and engineering patents that built this $12 million sanctuary. During my long career starting in '94 at the Quantico Laboratories, the specialist in identifying invisible death mastered the chemical patterns of human malice with a cold and relentless focus that few men could sustain. I tell the empty room that I spent 3 decades isolating the molecular traces of arsenic and scopolamine that other experts completely missed during the high-profile capital cases of the late '90s. Julian tells Sienna in the hallway that my old FBI stories are just the ramblings of a man living in a dead past. But I tell her that my memory of every crime scene remains as sharp as a forensic scalpel. I, the forensic expert who has successfully regained his technical competence in the dark, ensure that the justice I once served for strangers will now be the justice I serve for my own bloodline. Throughout those 30 years of service, I, Elias Thorne, the quiet guardian of the truth, documented every poison known to man to prepare for a day when the predator would finally enter my own home. I whisper to the shadows that knowledge is the only currency that never loses its value when the world decides you are no longer useful. Within the thick stone walls of this coastal Maine estate 10 years ago, I, Elias Thorne, the mechanical engineer and patent holder, invested my industrial royalties into a $5 million piece of land that I bought for nearly nothing in '94. For over 40 years in the manufacturing sector, I, the inventor of specialized refrigeration components, earned the quiet wealth that allowed me to buy this sanctuary free and clear of any debt. I tell Julian that I bought this acreage for $80,000, and now he tells me that developers are circling with offers of $5 million for the cliffside alone. He whispers to Sienna that I am just a lucky retiree who stumbled into a gold mine. But I tell her that every brick of this house was paid for by the patents I filed while he was still in grade school. During my engineering career, I, the technical architect of my daughter's future, ensured that her inheritance would be protected by the very logic that Julian thinks I have completely lost. I, the provider who lived modestly on purpose to avoid the attention of vultures, realize that his arrogance is the exact reason he believes I am an easy target instead of a lethal threat. I tell the heir that he should never mistake a quiet life for a weak mind, because I have fixed every pipe and wire in this building with my own 2 hands. While standing in front of the mahogany bookshelf later this afternoon, I, Elias Thorne, the guardian of human history, watched Julian calculate the liquidation price of my $3 million rare medical manuscript collection. Julian tells me that these old Thorne charters are just dust-covered wood pulp that would look much better as a $4 million liquid asset in a high-yield investment account. I tell him that I spent $700,000 on a single first edition in '96, because I knew that the truth recorded on paper is harder to erase than a digital balance. He laughs and says that the bank already thinks I am unfit to manage these assets. But I tell Sienna that her mother and I built this collection to be a shield against the world's greed. Before the wedding ceremony begins, in 3 weeks, he, the predatory vulture looking for a quick payout, whispers that he will sell my life's work to pay off his hidden debts in the city. I, the man who spent a lifetime finding the truth in the smallest technical details, see the hunger in his eyes and realize that he is already spending the money from a legacy he hasn't even stolen yet. I tell Sienna that she must never mistake shared blood for the shared values that actually build a family worth protecting. Currently in the kitchen during a late lunch, Elias Thorne, the primary target of Julian's $4 million gambling debt. Watch him check his phone with a nervous energy that he cannot hide from a trained investigator. Julian tells Sienna that the wedding expenses are reaching over $200,000 and that we might need to sell a few parcels of the western woods to cover the costs. I, the forensic ghost who has already mapped his financial destruction, tell him that those woods are the lungs of this estate and will never be sold to a developer while I am still breathing. He tells me that I am being unreasonable and that my $12 million total net worth can easily handle a small liquidation for the sake of Sienna's happiness. I, the man he thinks is a senile relic, realize that his role inversion is becoming more aggressive because he is now barking orders at me in my own dining room. Julian whispers to the doctor over his shoulder that my resistance to his advice is a clear sign of my growing paranoia and cognitive decline. I, the technical architect of his coming downfall, pretend to be confused by the numbers while I secretly record his admission that he needs the money to satisfy a syndicate in New York. I tell the ghost of my wife that the vulture is finally ready to snap at the bait I have laid in the shadows of this house. Tonight, in the cold silence of the hallway, I, Elias Thorne, the silent witness to my own social erasure, hear Julian tell his creditors that the $12 million gold mine is practically his. Julian tells a man named Marcus that the old man has finally stopped fighting and that the durable power of attorney will be signed before the weekend. I, the 72-year-old retired expert, note the toxic small detail of his celebratory drink while he thinks I am lost in a scopolamine-induced sleep in the next room. He tells the creditor that he will have the first $1 million installment ready as soon as I am safely committed to the nursing home in Portland. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, watch the spectrometer data on my hidden screen confirm that my technical trap is already capturing his every word. Julian tells the shadows that I am a hollow shell of a man, but I tell the darkness that he has forgotten that ghosts can still pull the trigger for justice. I am Elias Thorne, and Julian is about to learn that you never try to poison a man who spent 40 years writing the book on how to find the invisible truth. The weight of this legacy is not measured in dollars, but in the precision of the revenge I am about to execute against the man who tried to steal my mind. At 3 a.m. in the sterile silence of my hidden basement laboratory, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired FBI lead forensic toxicologist, place a sample of the dried tea leaves into a centrifuge to begin the cold investigation of my own betrayal. For 30 years in the FBI laboratory at Quantico, I, the primary specialist in identifying invisible death, mastered the art of finding the truth in the smallest molecular traces. I whisper to the ghost of my wife that Julian has no idea he's playing a game of shadows with a man who wrote the manual on chemical warfare. Julian tells me during the day that I cannot even remember where I put my glasses. But I tell the empty lab that I can still recite the exact titration levels of every poison known to the government. I, the technical architect of his coming downfall, use a high-resolution mass spectrometer to isolate the chemical signature of the scopolamine he has been sliding across my desk. I record the data with a steady hand because I realize that my intellectual authority is the only weapon that can stop his predatory takeover of our $12 million legacy. By documenting the exact milligram of his malice, I, the man he thinks is rotting from the inside out, prepare the evidence that will eventually turn his freedom into a prison cell. Julian tells Sienna that I'm a heavy burden on the family, but I tell the spectrometer that I am the judge who has already begun the trial in the shadows of this house. Later that morning, in the cold room near the boiler, I, Elias Thorne, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, analyze my own blood sample to measure the concentration of the toxin circulating through my veins. With the precision of a government investigator, I, the underdog who is quietly reversing the tide, observe the chemical reaction that confirms the presence of a zinc chelator intended to mimic neurodegeneration. I tell Sienna in my mind that her future husband is a professional con artist who treats our shared history like a disposable asset for his $4 million gambling debt. Julian asks me at lunch why my hands are shaking so much. And I tell him that my age is finally catching up to me while I secretly catalog the toxic small detail of his condescending smile. I, the silent recorder of his crimes, realize that the role inversion is nearly complete because the man who should be my son is now treating me like a lab rat. He tells the doctor over the phone that I am experiencing another episode. But I tell the data on my screen that I am more awake than I have been in a decade. Through the lens of my old microscope, I, the architect of a coming storm, watch the chemical evidence of his betrayal crystallize into a case of elder financial abuse. I whisper to the silence that a 0.5 milligram of scopolamine is not enough to kill the instincts of a man who spent 30 years at Quantico, while using an encrypted satellite uplink at 4 a.m. Elias Thorne, the master of the long-term attention system. Activate my old network of former FBI laboratory technicians to track the digital footprint of Julian's conspiracy. With a series of quick keystrokes on the secure terminal, and the technical leader of this counter-operation instruct my old friend Marcus to trace the medical order for the toxin back to an unlicensed pharmacy. I tell Marcus over the coded line that this investigation is no longer just a job, but a cold war for the survival of my family's dignity and $12 million legacy. Marcus tells me that Julian has already accessed my private offshore accounts through a remote access service executable he installed on my laptop. I tell him that I have already prepared a digital kill switch that will freeze every asset the moment the wedding vows are spoken. I, the forensic expert who has already mapped the financial destruction of the Vulture, watch the satellite data confirm that Julian is talking to a debt collector in New York. Julian tells Marcus over his own phone that the old man has finally stopped fighting. But I tell the network that I am just getting started with the investigation. By reopening the loop of his past crimes, I, the man Julian thinks is a relic, ensure that his own arrogance will be the very thing that leads him to the federal authorities. During the final hour of my night shift in the basement, I, Elias Thorne, the technical architect of my own survival, witnessed the true depth of the alliance between Julian and Dr. Aris. I, the primary target of their chemical warfare, discover an encrypted folder on the doctor's cloud drive that lists my estate as a pre-sold asset to a development firm. I tell the ghost of my wife that her garden will never be turned into a luxury condo while I have the power to stop it. Julian tells the doctor that Sienna is too stupid to notice the changes in my behavior, but I tell the recording device that he has underestimated the intelligence of the woman I raised. I, the man playing the role of the dying patriarch, finalize the forensic report that lists every dose of scopolamine and every fraudulent medical entry. Julian tells the heir that the 3 weeks until the wedding are just a formality before he becomes the king of this cliffside. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, whisper to the spectrometer that I am the only king who still rules this land with a cold and steady hand. I tell the empty room that I have already spent 40 years finding the truth in the shadows, and that tonight I have finally found Julian's ending. As the first light of dawn touches the waves outside my window, I, Elias Thorne, the quiet guardian of the Thorne legacy, prepare to return to the world of the living and play my part as a victim. I tell Sienna during breakfast that I had a strange dream about my old cases, and I watch Julian tell her that I am just hallucinating from the stress. I, the man who has already catalogued his malice, feel the weight of the placebos Sienna secretly provided for me in my pocket. Julian tells me that I should sign the durable power of attorney today because my health is clearly declining faster than we expected. I tell him with a shaking voice that I will do whatever he thinks is best for Sienna's future, while I secretly record his admission of my supposed state. I, the technical architect of a coming storm, watch him smile as he believes he has finally captured the old wolf in his snare. Julian tells the guests at the breakfast table that he is honored to take on the responsibility of my medical care. I whisper to myself that he is not a savior, but a vulture who has forgotten that ghosts can still pull the trigger for justice. I am Elias Thorne, and the investigation is now complete. The only thing left for Julian is the sentence I am about to execute. Inside the heavy shadows of my library at 4 in the morning, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired forensic ghost, activate the remote access service on my laptop to monitor Julian's encrypted correspondence with the predatory world he hidden from Sienna. With the cold precision of a man who spent 30 years at Quantico, the technical architect of a coming storm, watch the text scroll across my screen as Julian tells a man named Marcus that the $12 million main estate is already practically his. I tell the silence of the room that his arrogance is a toxic small detail that he will regret when the federal authorities finally come knocking on his door. Julian tells his associate that the $3 million manuscript collection will be sold to a private buyer in London as soon as the old man is safely moved to a nursing home. I, the primary victim of his chemical warfare, discover that his gambling debt to a New York syndicate has reached exactly $4 million. He tells Marcus that I am nothing more than a senile relic who has forgotten how to defend his own land, and that the committal papers are the only thing standing between him and his freedom. I, the forensic expert who has already mapped his financial destruction record, the precise time of every message to ensure that the court sees the clear motive behind his conspiracy. Julian tells his creditor that he will have the first installment of the cash right after the wedding ceremony because the old man is losing his grip on reality faster than expected. While sitting in the cold conservatory at dawn, I, Elias Thorne, the silent witness to my own betrayal, intercept an encrypted voice call between Julian and our board-certified family physician, Dr. Aris. Julian tells the doctor that the scopolamine dosage needs to be increased because the old wolf is still showing flashes of his former intelligence during our morning meals. I, the man who once spent 3 decades cataloging poison for the government, hear Dr. Aris reply that he has already falsified the HIPAA-protected medical records to create a paper trail of early-onset dementia. He tells Julian that $50,000 in untraceable cryptocurrency is a small price to pay for the control of a $12 million coastal legacy. I, the master of toxicological science, note that the doctor is violating his oath to turn a strong man into a mindless puppet for financial gain. Julian tells the doctor that Sienna is too stupid to notice the changes and that the durable power of attorney will be signed before the weekend. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, listen as they laugh about how easy it is to liquidate a man who spent 40 years building a fortress. Dr. Aris tells Julian that my blood pressure is reaching dangerous levels and that I should expect more frequent dizzy spells as the scopolamine takes full effect. I, the architect of a coming reversal, whispers to the darkness that he has forgotten that a wolf is most dangerous when you think he is dying. During a private meeting in the West Wing at 10 in the morning, Elias Thorne, acting as a man who can no longer find his way to his own chair, watches Julian hand a sealed envelope to Dr. Aris while pretending I cannot see through my clouded eyes. Julian tells the doctor that the second half of the payment is ready as soon as the judge signs the order for my permanent care in Portland. I, the retired FBI specialist, who is currently recording every word through a hidden microphone in my flannel shirt, here, doctor. Aris says that my cognitive test results are now officially failing. He tells me to sign a new medication waiver that will supposedly help with my confusion. But I know it is actually a legal document that transfers my medical decisions to Julian. I, the forensic ghost who is rebuilding his competence in the dark, pretend to sign the paper with a hand that trembles exactly as he expects from a victim of his toxin. Julian tells the doctor that the plan is foolproof because I have no other family to verify my health, and no one in Maine will question a respected physician. I, the technical architect of a coming storm, watches him smile as he believes he has finally captured the old wolf in his snare. He whispers that the 3 weeks until the wedding are just a formality before he becomes the master of the Thorne estate. I, the survivor of this $12 million gamble, realize that his arrogance is the exact reason he believes I am a target instead of a threat. Later that afternoon, in the quiet of the hallway, Elias Thorne, the quiet guardian of the Thorne legacy, hears Julian tell Marcus over the phone that he has already pre-sold the estate to a luxury development firm. Julian tells the developer that the old man will be out of the house by the end of the month and that they can begin clearing the $5 million cliffside property immediately. I, the man Julian thinks is a hollow shell, realize that his role inversion is becoming more aggressive because he is now making decisions about my life as if I were already dead. Julian whispers to the phone that Sienna will thank him later when she sees the profit from the sale of her father's useless collection. I, the forensic expert who has already mapped his financial destruction, watch the satellite data confirm that he is talking to a debt collector about his $4 million losses. Julian tells the room that tomorrow will be the start of a brand new era for the Thorne legacy. But I tell the ghost of my wife that he is only starting his journey to a prison cell. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, feel the cold precision of my FBI training return to my blood as the investigation into his vulture network is finally complete. He tells the heir that he is the one in control, but I whisper that blood does not make a family, but loyalty does. I am Elias Thorne, and Julian is about to learn that you should never try to poison a man who spent 40 years finding the truth in the shadows. At 8 o'clock this morning, in the sun-drenched breakfast room of my Maine estate, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired FBI lead toxicologist, perform the first act of my calculated mental collapse by letting my hand tremble until the antique china plate shatters against the hardwood floor. Julian looks at the mess with a sneer and tells me that I am becoming a liability to the $12 million family legacy that I spent 40 years of my life building with blood and sweat. I, the man who spent 3 decades at Quantico identifying the invisible traces of murder, tell him with a hollow voice that I simply cannot remember how to hold a fork anymore. Julian laughs and tells Sienna that her father is officially a ghost of his former self, and that it is a crime to let a man in my condition manage a $5 million cliffside property. I, the technical architect of his coming downfall, watch him through my clouded eyes while he whispers to his creditors on his cell phone that the old wolf has finally lost his teeth. He tells a man named Marcus that the $3 million manuscript collection will be liquidated before the month is over to satisfy his $4 million gambling debt to the New York syndicate. I, the primary victim of his chemical warfare, note the toxic small detail of how he kicks a piece of the broken porcelain toward my feet while telling me to stay in my seat like a dog. Julian tells the heir that the scopolamine is working even better than Dr. Aris promised, that I will be lucky if I remember my own middle name by the time the wedding ceremony begins. I, the forensic expert who has already replaced the poison with vitamins, pretend to cry while secretly recording my admission of my planned social erasure. Shortly after the breakfast mess is cleared by the staff at 10 in the morning, I, Elias Thorne, acting as a man who has lost his place in time, wander into Julian's temporary office to gather the final pieces of digital evidence for my legal counterstrike. Julian looks up from his laptop and tells me that I have no business being in this room because the $12 million estate documents are now his private concern. I, the 72-year-old forensic ghost, stammer that I am just looking for my wife Linda and ask him if she is coming home for the heritage dinner tonight. Julian stands up and tells me that Linda has been dead for 3 years and that I am so far gone I don't even deserve to live in a house this beautiful anymore. I, the man who once spent 30 years finding truth in the shadows of capital cases, watch him pull a durable power of attorney form from his briefcase and tell me to sign it immediately. He tells me that Sienna is too busy with the $200,000 wedding preparations to deal with my episodes, and that I am a burden that needs to be managed by a professional. I, the technical leader of this operation, pretend to be unable to hold the pen while I secretly observe the password he types into his encrypted $4 million debt ledger. Julian tells me that the bank has already approved the transition of my offshore accounts because Dr. Aris filed the report, stating I have reached the final stages of cognitive failure. I, the architect of a coming storm, watch him smile as I finally sign the document with a forensic mark that proves I am under duress. He tells the doctor over the speakerphone that the $12 million gold mine is now open for business and that they will be rich before the sun sets on the wedding day. During the quiet afternoon hours in the West Wing Library at 2 o'clock, I, Elias Thorne, the silent witness to my own betrayal, watch Julian explain to a local real estate developer how he plans to clear the $5 million cliffside to build luxury condos. Julian tells the man that the 72-year-old owner is currently being moved to a high-security nursing home and will no longer be an obstacle to the development project. I, the man who spent 40 years protecting the natural beauty of this Maine land, listen as he offers to sell the eastern woods for a $3 million kickback that will never be reported to Sienna. Julian tells the developer that the old man is so confused he probably thinks the trees are people, and that the manuscripts are just firewood. I, the forensic expert who is rebuilding his competence in the dark, hear him admit that he has already pre-sold the Thorne Charter to a private buyer in London for $700,000 in untraceable cash. He tells the developer that he needs the money by Friday to pay off the syndicate before they decide to make Sienna a widow before she is even a bride. I, the technical architect of his destruction, note the toxic small detail of how he drinks my vintage scotch, while laughing about how he is going to strip the house of every valuable heirloom. Julian tells the man that the legacy I built is nothing more than a bank account waiting to be emptied by someone with the courage to take it. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, feel the cold precision of my training return to my blood as I record his plan to turn my daughter's inheritance into a $4 million payout for a criminal syndicate. Late this evening at 6 o'clock in the darkened hallway near the kitchen, I, Elias Thorne, the patriarch who is being treated like a disposable asset, hear Julian tell Sienna that I tried to strike him during a moment of confusion. Julian tells my daughter that my violent outbursts are becoming a danger to everyone in the $12 million estate and that we must move the committal date forward. I, the man who has never raised a hand in anger to anyone I love, watch Sienna cry as he tells her that I have forgotten her name and replaced it with the name of a stranger from my old FBI files. Julian whispers to her that the $5 million house is no longer a home, but a prison for a man who is rotting from the inside out. I, the 72-year-old forensic ghost, watched Sienna look at me with a mixture of pain and the secret knowledge we shared in the wine cellar at midnight. She tells him that she will do whatever is necessary to protect the legacy. But I see the toxic small detail of her hand tightening on her phone as she realizes he is lying about my behavior. Julian tells her that the 3 weeks until the wedding are too long and that I should be moved to the Portland facility by tomorrow morning. I, the man playing the role of the dying patriarch, stumbles into the room and asks for a glass of water, while Julian tells me to shut up and go back to my cage. He tells Sienna that he is the only one who has the strength to do what is right for the Thorne family name. I, the technical leader of this counterstrike, realize that the vulture is finally ready to snap at the bait I have laid in the shadows of this house. As the clock strikes 9 in the sterile silence of my bedroom tonight, I, Elias Thorne, the quiet guardian of the truth, use my hidden tablet to review the final data stream from Julian's mirrored smartphone. Julian tells a man named Marcus in a recorded voice note that the $12 million plan is coming to a close and that he will be clear of his $4 million debt by Monday. I, the forensic expert who once spent 30 years at Quantico, watched the digital evidence of his conspiracy to commit fraud and murder crystallize into a perfect legal trap. He tells the syndicate that he has successfully manipulated the daughter and erased the father from the equation of power. I, the technical architect of a coming reversal, whispers to the darkness that he has underestimated the intelligence of a woman who was raised by a man who finds truth in the invisible. Julian tells the heir that he is the new master of the cliffside, but I tell the spectrometer data that he is nothing more than a prisoner who hasn't seen the bars yet. I, the 72-year-old forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, feel the weight of the irrevocable trust documents that Sienna and I have already finalized to protect our land. Julian tells the doctor that the old man is finally broken, but I tell the silence that the only thing breaking tonight is the foundation of his $4 million lie. I am Elias Thorne, and the play of the dying patriarch is over. Now the investigation into his vulture network will become his public execution. At 12 o'clock in the silent library of my main estate, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired lead forensic toxicologist, watched my daughter Sienna enter the room with a look of absolute terror that she can no longer hide from her father. During the last 4 days in this $5 million house, she, the only child and heir to my $12 million legacy, has been secretly monitoring the encrypted network traffic of her own fiancé, Julian. Sienna tells me that she found a hidden folder on his cloud drive labeled Final Liquidation, which contains the predated committal papers for the Portland Geriatric Facility. I, the man who spent 30 years at Quantico identifying the invisible signatures of malice, tell her that I have known about the scopolamine in my tea since the very first morning of the Heritage Gala. She whispers that Julian has already finalized a $3 million pre-sale agreement for my rare manuscript collection with a private buyer in London to satisfy his gambling debts. I, the technical architect of our coming survival, realize that the role inversion is shifting again because my daughter is no longer the victim, but the primary investigator of this family betrayal. Sienna tells me that Julian spent over $80,000 on private security to ensure I am moved quietly to the nursing home during the wedding reception. I, the silent patriarch who refuses to be erased, listen as she reveals the toxic small detail of how Julian has already changed the emergency access codes to our $5 million cliffside property. She tells me that she saw him laughing with Dr. Eris about the $50,000 cryptocurrency bribe that will buy my permanent silence in the city. I, the forensic ghost, who is rebuilding his competence, realize that the $4 million debt Julian owes to the New York syndicate has turned our home into a battlefield for the truth. In the cold shadows of the wine cellar at 2 in the morning, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old former forensic specialist, analyze the digital logs with my daughter Sienna to expose Julian S. fraudulent contracts. For the last 72 hours in this coastal sanctuary, Sienna, acting as my primary digital operative, has been using a remote access service to mirror every keystroke Julian makes on his encrypted laptop. She tells me that the $4 million debt is not just from gambling, but from a failed development scheme that went sideways in Atlantic City last summer. I told her that the scopolamine levels in my blood were precisely measured to ensure I remained conscious enough to witness his every criminal mistake. Sienna whispers that Julian already scheduled the movers to empty my $3 million library at the exact moment we are supposed to be standing at the altar. I, the man who spent 3 decades at the FBI laboratory, show her the forensic evidence I collected from the tea canisters and the hidden recording devices in the West Wing. She tells me that the toxic, small detail she noticed was Julian referring to our family history as a pile of wood pulp during his last call to the London buyer. I, the technical architect of his coming downfall, explained to Sienna that we will use his own arrogance to lure him into a public confession in front of the county sheriff. Sienna says that she has already replaced my next dose of poison with a harmless vitamin placebo to ensure my mind remains sharp for the final reckoning. I, the patriarch, who is no longer asking for permission, realize that our shared values are the only thing that can protect this $12 million legacy from a vulture. While sitting at the mahogany table in the pre-dawn light, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old guardian of the Thorne name, review the forged durable power of attorney with Sienna to identify the technical flaws in Julian's conspiracy. Throughout the quiet hours of this Maine morning, Sienna, the technical lead of our counterstrike, explains how Julian used a deepfake voice filter to convince the estate lawyers that I was consenting to the liquidation. She tells me that the $5 million cliffside property has already been listed on a private luxury real estate portal for a quick cash sale of $4.5 million. I tell my daughter that I have already contacted my old network at Quantico to verify the digital signatures on the fraudulent commitment papers he tried to force me to sign. Sienna whispers that Dr. Aris has been falsifying my neurological scans for over a month to build a documented history of rapid cognitive decline. I, the forensic expert who once spent 30 years finding the truth in small details, show her the hidden forensic mark I placed on the documents to prove they were signed under chemical duress. She tells me that Julian told the wedding planner that I would be too sick to attend the reception and that a video message would be played instead. I, the technical architect of a coming storm, realize that his role inversion is so complete that he believes he has already erased me from the physical world. Sienna says that she found a $300,000 life insurance policy Julian took out on me with a double indemnity clause for accidental falls. I, the silent witness to my own intended murder, tell her that the vulture has forgotten that a ghost can still pull the trigger on a federal indictment. During our final secret meeting in the library at 5 a.m., Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old forensic ghost, finalized the technical parameters of the wedding day trap with Sienna to ensure Julian's total public humiliation. For the next 48 hours in this house, I, the man playing the role of the dying patriarch, will continue to mimic the tremors of a scopolamine victim to keep Julian's guard down. Sienna tells me that she has already uploaded the $4 million debt ledger and the recorded bribes to a secure server that will broadcast to the wedding guests' cell phones. I tell her that the $12 million legacy is not just about the money, but about the 40 years of integrity I built into every brick of this Maine cliffside. She whispers that Julian is planning to use the wedding rings as a symbolic handover of the power of attorney in front of the entire coastal elite. The technical architect of his destruction explained to her that the moment he tries to speak his vows, I will reveal the forensic report that proves he is a professional con artist. Sienna tells me that she has never felt more proud to be my daughter than she does at this moment in the shadows of our home. I, the patriarch who is reclaiming his position of power, feel the cold precision of my FBI training return to my blood as the investigation into the Vulture network is finally complete. Julian tells the maid in the hallway that he can already taste the victory, but I tell the silence that he is only tasting the ash of his own burned reputation. I, the man who spent a lifetime finding the truth, realize that the only thing left for Julian is the sentence I am about to execute in front of the world. As the first light of the morning touches the waves, outside the study, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old master of the long-term attention system, watch Julian enter the room with a glass of water and a condescending smile for his dying father-in-law. Julian tells me that I should try to get some sleep because the big day is only 48 hours away and I need to look presentable for the cameras. I, the forensic expert who has already mapped his financial destruction, pretend to be confused by the date and ask him if Linda is coming home for the wedding. Julian laughs and tells me that Linda is dead and that I am so far gone I probably won't even remember Sienna's name by the time we get to the lighthouse. I, the technical architect of his coming downfall, watch him through my clouded eyes while he whispers to himself that the $12 million gold mine is finally within his reach. He tells the heir that the scopolamine is the best investment he ever made and that he will be rich before the sun sets on the Maine coast. I, the forensic ghost who refused to be erased, feel the placebo Sienna gave me working in my system as I prepare to give the performance of a lifetime. I tell Julian with a shaking voice that I trust him to take care of Sienna after I am gone. And I watch him smile like a vulture at a feast. I am Elias Thorne, and Julian is about to learn that you never try to poison a man who spent 40 years cataloging the exact molecular signature of a traitor's heart. At 11 o'clock this morning, on the jagged cliffs of the Maine lighthouse, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired FBI forensic expert, arrived for the wedding ceremony while leaning heavily on Sienna's arm to maintain the final stage of my calculated physical collapse. Julian stands at the altar with a proprietary smile and tells the 200 elite guests that he is honored to accept the heavy responsibility of the Thorne family legacy. I, the man who spent 30 years at Quantico cataloging the molecular signatures of human greed, feel the toxic small detail of his hand gripping my shoulder with a force that says I am already a ghost in my own home. Julian tells the crowd that my failing health has made this a bittersweet day, and whispers that he will personally oversee my medical transition to the Portland facility by sunset. I, the primary target of his $4 million gambling conspiracy, pretend to lose my balance while secretly verifying that the remote access service has successfully synchronized my evidence files with the county sheriff's mobile device. He tells Sienna that her father looks particularly confused today and suggests that we hurry through the vows before I have another public episode on the cliffside. I, the technical architect of a coming storm, watch the ocean waves crash against the rocks and realize that the role inversion is about to snap back with the force of a federal indictment. Julian tells the officiant to begin the service immediately so he can finalize the durable power of attorney before the reception dinner. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, listen as the music starts and prepare to turn his moment of total triumph into a public execution of his character. During the exchange of the vows in front of the silent witnesses, at 11:30, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old architect of this public reversal, stand up without the aid of my cane and command the officiant to stop the ceremony. Julian tells me to sit down and whispers that I am having a scopolamine-induced delusion that will embarrass Sienna in front of the entire coastal elite. I, the man who once spent 3 decades identifying forgeries for the government, tell the audience in a cold and steady voice that my future son-in-law is a professional con artist who owes $4 million to a New York syndicate. Julian tells the sheriff that I am a danger to myself and shouts that my cognitive failure has reached a state of violent paranoia. I, the technical leader of this counterstrike, pull a digital tablet from my vest and tell the guests to check their own smartphones for the mirrored logs of Julian's encrypted debt ledger. Sienna steps away from the altar and tells Julian that she has known about his alliance with Dr. Aris since she found the $50,000 cryptocurrency bribe in his cloud storage. I tell Julian that the scopolamine he has been sliding across my desk has been replaced with placebos for the last 72 hours, and that my blood work is currently being processed as evidence. He tells Sienna that I am manipulating her and tries to grab her arm, but I tell him that he has no authority over this family or this $12 million legacy. I, the forensic ghost who has regained his competence, watch his face turn from arrogance to terror as the digital kill switch broadcasts his recorded plan to liquidate the $5 million house to every person in the harbor. Shortly after the evidence goes live on every screen at noon, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old survivor of a $12 million conspiracy, watch the county sheriff move toward the altar to take Julian into custody for elder financial abuse. Julian tells the sheriff that I am a senile old man who has fabricated a digital fantasy to destroy his reputation. I, the man who spent 30 years at the FBI laboratory, present the certified forensic report that proves the durable power of attorney was signed under chemical duress and technical fraud. The sheriff tells Julian that he has a warrant for his arrest based on the conspiracy to commit murder and the unauthorized distribution of controlled substances. I tell the guests that my intellectual authority is fully intact and that the probate court has already issued a permanent injunction against any sale of the Thorn manuscripts. Julian tells the room that he only did it for the family, but I tell him that he is nothing more than a vulture who tried to pick the bones of a man who was still very much alive. I, the technical architect of his destruction, watch Sienna hand the sheriff the recorder that captured Julian and Dr. Aris discussing the dosage required to make me disappear. Julian tells the heir that he will sue the estate for every penny. But I tell him that his $4 million debt will follow him into the prison cell I have built for him. I, the forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, feel the power shift back into my hands as the elite of Maine realize that the patriarch was never the victim, but the executioner. As the clock strikes 1 during the fallout of the lighthouse arrest, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old guardian of the Thorne name watch, Dr. Aris, try to escape through the parking lot before he is stopped by my old network of FBI technicians. Aris tells the officers that he was only acting in my best interest. But I tell him that violating the HIPAA laws for a $50,000 bribe has officially ended his career in medicine. I, the technical leader of this counter-operation, show the sheriff the digital logs that prove the doctor falsified my neurological scans to assist Julian in the $4 million asset liquidation. Sienna tells the doctor that she will personally ensure the Board of Medicine reviews every fraudulent entry he made in her father's files. I tell the remaining guests that the $12 million legacy is now secured in an irrevocable trust that protects Sienna from any future predatory alliances. Julian tells the sheriff that Sienna is the one who suggested the commitment. But Sienna tells him that her only suggestion was the trap we set in the wine cellar at midnight. I, the forensic expert who once spent 30 years at Quantico, watched the vulture be loaded into the back of a squad car while the sun continues to shine on the land he tried to steal. Julian tells me that I am a cold bastard. But I tell him that I am a practical businessman who knows how to protect what is mine. I, the man who spent a lifetime finding truth in small details, realize that the public consequence of his greed is finally complete, and that the honor of my home has been reclaimed from the shadows. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the quiet cliffside, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old master of the long-term attention system, walk with Sienna back toward our $5 million home while the last of the guests depart in a state of shock. Sienna tells me that she never realized how much weight I was carrying during the weeks of the scopolamine investigation. I, the forensic ghost who has finally found his peace, tell her that the $12 million legacy was always secondary to the loyalty she showed me when the world thought I was useless. Julian tells himself in the back of the police cruiser that he was so close to victory. But I tell Sienna that he never understood that a ghost can still pull the digital trigger for justice. She whispers that the $5 million cliffside feels like a sanctuary again, and that she is ready to help me restore the manuscripts he tried to sell. I, the technical architect of a coming reversal, feel the strength return to my legs as the role inversion is permanently corrected in the eyes of the law. Julian tells the heir that the old man won by a fluke, but I tell the ocean that I won, because wisdom always outlasts the hunger of a vulture. I am Elias Thorne, and the wedding day reckoning has proven that you never try to poison a man who spent 40 years cataloging the exact molecular signature of a traitor's heart. The trap has closed, and the only thing left for Julian is the sentence that the system is about to deliver. In the cold halls of the Portland Superior Court this morning, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old retired FBI toxicologist, watched the Honorable Judge Matthews read the final 12-year federal sentence to Julian Vane for the crimes of conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated elder financial abuse. During the 3-hour hearing on this gray Maine Tuesday, the primary victim who refused to become a ghost, listened as the prosecutor detailed how every milligram of scopolamine found in my tea canister matched the chemical signature of Julian's illegal transactions. I tell the court, in a steady voice, that Julian did not just try to steal my $12 million legacy, but he tried to dismantle the very identity I spent 40 years building as a man of science and integrity. Julian tells his defense attorney that he was only trying to stabilize the family finances, but the judge tells him that his $4 million gambling debt to a New York syndicate is the only motive that matters in this courtroom. I, the technical architect of this systemic reversal, watch the bailiff lead Julian away in handcuffs while he screams that he will be back to claim what he thinks is his. He tells me that I am a monster for destroying his future, but I tell him that I am a father who simply protected his daughter from a vulture. In that moment of absolute public humiliation, I, the forensic expert who once cataloged the end of 300 lives, realize that the sentence I built for Julian is far more permanent than any poison he ever tried to give me. I tell Sienna that the $12 million estate is no longer a crime scene, but a sanctuary that has been cleansed by the cold hand of the law. Inside the sterile offices of the Maine Board of Medicine later this afternoon, Elias Thorne, acting as the lead witness for the state, testify against Dr. Aris to ensure his professional license is revoked for his $50,000 alliance with a criminal. During the disciplinary hearing at 2 o'clock, the survivor of his falsified neurological reports present the digital logs that prove he accepted cryptocurrency bribes to declare me mentally incompetent. I tell the board members that Dr. Aris violated his Hippocratic oath to turn a healthy man into a mindless puppet for the sake of Julian S. $4 million liquidation plan. Aris tells the board that he was under extreme duress from Julian's threats. But I tell him that a man of science should never mistake a threat for an excuse to commit chemical warfare against a patient. I, the man who spent 30 years at Quantico finding the truth in small details, watched the board president sign the order that permanently bans Dr. Aris from practicing medicine in the United States. He tells me that I have ruined his life, but I tell him that he ruined his own life the moment he decided that $50,000 was worth more than a human mind. Sienna tells the investigators that she has the recorded logs of his conspiracy to commit medical fraud, and I watch the police escort him toward a 5-year prison term for his role in our betrayal. I, the technical leader of this counterstrike, feel the weight of the social erasure begin to lift as the system finally corrects the hierarchy of power in our town. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on the porch of our $5 million cliffside home, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old master of the long-term attention system, finalized the irrevocable trust documents with my attorney to protect Sienna from any future predatory vultures. While the sun begins to sink toward the Atlantic waves, I, the quiet guardian of the Thorne name, ensure that the $12 million total net worth is locked behind a digital and legal fortress that requires Sienna's explicit consent for any transaction. I tell my lawyer that the $3 million manuscript collection will be donated to the FBI Academy's research wing upon my death, to ensure the knowledge I collected is never liquidated for greed. Sienna tells me that she wants to rename the library after her mother, and I tell her that it is the most beautiful way to honor the legacy that Julian tried to turn into wood pulp. I, the forensic ghost who has finally found his peace, realize that the role inversion has been permanently reversed because the patriarch is now the architect of a future he will never see. She tells me that the house feels bigger now that the shadows of Julian's lies have been chased away by the truth. I, the man Julian thought was a disposable asset, watched the property lines of the $5 million estate and realized that the only thing he managed to take from me was the illusion that all family is loyal. I tell the empty air that the $4 million debt Julian left behind will be his only legacy, while the Thorne name continues to stand for the truth. During our final dinner in the West Wing at the 7 o'clock tonight, I, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old survivor of a $12 million bet, look at Sienna across the table and notice the toxic small detail of the empty seat where Julian used to sit. I, the forensic expert who once spent 40 years finding the invisible truth, tell my daughter that I am sorry she had to witness the cold precision of my revenge. Sienna tells me that she is not sad for the loss of a traitor, but she is mourning the version of the future she thought she had with a man she trusted. I tell her that blood does not make a family, but it is the shared values of loyalty and integrity that define the strength of our bloodline. She asks me if I ever regret being a toxicologist, and I tell her that my career is the only reason she is not currently visiting me in a high-security nursing home. I, the patriarch who has reclaimed his position of power, feel the bittersweet aftertaste of a victory that came at the cost of her innocence. Julian tells his cellmate tonight that he was a victim of a senile old man's trap. But I tell Sienna that he was a victim of his own belief that age is the same as weakness. We sit in the silence of the $5 million sanctuary and realize that the poetic justice is not in the prison sentence, but in the fact that we are still here, and he is gone. I tell her that the $12 million legacy is now hers to carry, and I watch her nod with the same cold focus that I used to have at Quantico. As the clock strikes midnight, in the quiet study of my main estate, Elias Thorne, the 72-year-old forensic ghost who refuses to be erased, place the final file on Julian Vane into the cabinet marked Evidence Closed. I, the technical architect of a $12 million survival, feel the weight of the investigation finally leave my shoulders as the moon lights up the cliffside I spent 40 years protecting. I tell the listeners of this confession that you should never mistake the silence of an old man for the absence of his technical power or his forensic mind. The final moral lesson of this war is that truth always finds its way through the fog. But it requires a steady hand and the courage to set a trap for those who claim to love you. I, the man who spent a lifetime finding the truth in small details, realize that the only thing Julian will ever own is the memory of how he was defeated by the very man he tried to destroy. Sienna tells me good night and whispers that she loves me, and I tell her that she is the only reason the forensic ghost finally has a reason to stay in the light. I am Elias Thorne, and the poetic justice of this $12 million legacy is now complete. The vulture is in a cage, and the wolf is finally at rest on his own land. The end.